we have not a love-hate relationship with Psyche's videos. Some of them, though, are better than others, but we can't always post W's, right? But I think he makes good content, and I'm curious about this one. This one's done numbers. Predatory, gacha game, monetization tactics, tier list from bad to worse, which I think's fair from bad to worse, because, it's hard to say there's a good monetization system, right? I think we just have, lesser versions of a pretty crappy system, right? All right, let's check this one out then, guys. We're going to give it a preemptive like. Let's see what he's got to say here about the predatory gacha monetization systems and who is going to be at the worst end of things and who's going to be at the not so bad end, I guess.
MiHoYo is not your friend.
What?
Kuro Games is not your friend.
Oh my god. Lies. Solon says he loves me. This is lies, actually. Alright, this is a bad video. Solon says he loves me. He said it. You've seen it. He said he loves me. He's definitely my friend, man. Not taking this.
Hypergryph is not
slander.
Not your friend. Project Moon is not your friend. Gaming is a business. It has always been.
We need to crash out, chat. We need to crash out, chat. This is disgusting. Disgusting.
A business. Ever since the birth of arcades all the way to the rise of mobile gaming, companies have always used gaming as a medium for artistic expression as well as profit. While there are, in my opinion, honorable ways to monetize a game, there are also some not so honorable ways. Gacha games, and by extension mobile games, have had a decade of growth. I
don't know if honorable would be the term I would use, personally, but I think there's fair, right? I think fair ways. I suppose you could argue it's honorable. We're getting into semantics here. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, for a long time, man, gaming's a business through and through. It's always been a business, right? There was one period of time where you were gaming, and of course it was a business, and you'd be naive not to think so, but it didn't feel like it. And for me, that was PS1, PS2 era, and maybe the start of the PS3 era, and then like the business model was front and foremost, right? You couldn't even hide from it. Very few games now do you feel like, the business model doesn't permeate through the entire game. Of course, it's all a business, but you know what I mean? It's front and center, right?
At this point, with some even rivaling the quality of what you'd see on a console platform. At the same time, the tactics in which these games employ to ultimately retain and monetize you as a user have also been tried and perfected.
Yep.
From reinforcing habit formation.
These guys spend a lot of freaking money on psychologists to understand how we tick and to exploit that as much as possible, right? I've spoke about this before when it comes to it's easier for some games to go from being a gacha game to just being a live service game, right? Now, a live service game employs some of the same tactics, but just in a different way, because once you stop being a gacha game, in essence, to succeed outside the gacha space, you kind of have to redesign the way things work, because all the systems are designed to push you towards the inevitable thing of pulling on a character. However obvious they are, they're there, right? In the systems of just things from the daily logins, the little things you have to chase, the way you build a character, the way you clear content, the way you farm content. It's all designed in a way to soften your brain into thinking in a particular kind of way. So when it comes to actually getting characters, you're more likely to pull them. The little bundles, the little bits of currency here and there, sometimes giving you just enough to nearly get a character, but not quite over the line, that you're like, well, I may as well just spend to get past that little bit. You get those cheap little bundles that are enough to make you think, well, it's only $2.99. And then once you've spent, you're a lot more likely to continue spending, aren't you?
And with daily logins to proprietary currency obfuscating the cost of in-game items to fear of missing out elements creating artificial urgency.
Massive.
Today, I want to go over every single technique I've found over the years I've played gacha games, how they psychologically affect you, and more importantly, how you can avoid them. I'm going to be coming up with a list of 3 tiers of what I believe to be the practices ranked from least to most predatory. I'll be breaking down what these practices are and place them somewhere on the list. Hopefully, by the end...
Something to keep in mind as well is the content drops have to change. Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. The pacing, how you do your content, the way you structure your story, the way, as you say, you drop new content. It all has to change, doesn't it? That's why I said to people when people are like, oh, you could just take the gacha rate, man, and the game will be better. I'm like, I don't think you understand sometimes how fundamentally the game would have to change, because all of these systems will kind of be meaningless in a sense. They'll lead you to nothing at the end of the day. You'll be led up the garden path and you'll get there and you'll be like, You know, so yeah, it's not as it's why it's easier for some games to potentially do, but it still takes a drastic change in how you're approaching the entire post-launch content, right?
In the video, you'll be able to understand exactly how gacha monetization works and how to better moderate yourself as a player.
All right,
so let's begin.
Am I going to be getting you know, some education here? Is Dad going to teach me how to not be a degenerate? Okay.
We can go over the predatory practices. I think it's worthwhile to explain what the gacha model is and what I think of it. Now, I personally enjoy playing gacha games. I think it absolutely still has the potential to create artistry and create a vibrant story and community around it.
Definitely.
At its core, gacha games are able to build an ever-growing universe while having the player feeling involved in the plot as it unravels in real time. Alongside the extremely accessible nature of being played on your phone, the barrier of entry is low enough that the game can create a casual
you know what? I love Snowbreak. I think it's so based.
and inclusive atmosphere where pretty much everyone can get into. I personally got into Fate Grand Order as one of my first gacha games, and its high-quality story was something that kept me awake on the subway back when I was still commuting to university. This would be the best argument I can come up with where I believe the gacha model can be justified. However, reality is often not that simple. In a traditional video game, you pay the upfront fee of $60, then you get the entire game for you to do as you please. You might not get any updates for it, but the game includes the full experience, and the developer has no reason.
Well, I don't know, man. We do have plenty of games, right? I think we're starting to go away from that now, right? Where it's box price, it's live service, and it has lots of post-launch content, right? You know? Destiny, The Division, a myriad of other games, right? Tarkov, you know, obviously that's a little bit different in a sense. You know, Arc Raiders is upcoming, right? That's going to have a box price on it, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of aftermarket purchases. I do think a lot of games are definitely going to the free-to-play live service, but there's been games for years that have had a box price purchase and a live service element after the fact as well, or just a subscription-based system, right?
To place any player retention tactics and further ways to monetize, aside from maybe paid DLCs down the line.
Imagine
when the
gacha
business
game
model revolves around gacha, the main goals of the developer changes. Because the gacha games are expected to be free to download, there has to be some way to monetize.
Ain't no way you're going to get away with selling a game for 40 quid and then having a character-based gacha. But then again, Call of Duty does it. FIFA's managed to do it, right? You know? They've managed to sell you games and then be like, come on, gamble, kids. And they've made billions from it.
Monetize and retain its users across an indefinite period of time. After all, I've talked about this before, but user retention is extremely important for online businesses.
Yep.
They're often categorized as D1, D7, and D30 retention. This refers to Day 1, Day 7, and Day 30 respectively.
Okay, makes sense, yeah.
According to this Harvard Business article, increasing customer retention rate.
This is facts as well. You know, when you see games that are just like cancelling, you know, when you see a game EOS and you see some games where they might try and attempt to struggle through low revenue, it's probably because they're looking at things like this. They might have a high retention of players but a low spending. And then it's about, right, how do we encourage the spending habits to change? Where if you're having you know, the bottom falls out of your retention, it's hard to bring those players back then, and that's why you might have, you know, differences in, well, why did this game EOS when this game went on for ages and tried to fight the good fight, if you will? Probably things like this, right?
It's by even 5% can increase profits by 25% to 95%.
Holy shit.
I believe there are acceptable ways to retain and monetize users in ways that are morally and ethnically correct.
Did you say ethically or ethnically? Okay. When it comes to monetization in video games, I do think if you're going to have gambling elements, right, I think it is ethically and morally bad to have that advertised and be able to be played by kids. End of the day, it doesn't matter if a game's 18 plus, kids are going to play it, right? This is old man pick stuff here, right? But, you know, when I see people celebrating that Stellasaurus 9 plus, or I see people in the Wuthering Waves community angry that if it was Hoyo players getting the game, potentially getting its age brought up and that, oh my God, this is bad for the game. Why? Why do you want children to be gambling, right? Now, when it comes down to the systems themselves, now, obviously you can have the philosophical and moral argument of like the systems are designed in a way to extract as much cash from us. And some people are fundamentally much more, I guess, riskier people because there could potentially be, people who have gambling tendencies and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you're an adult, you can't put the responsibility on the company. It's your responsibility to spend how you spend right now. Don't deny that they employ a myriad of psychological triggers. Gacha itself is the most predatory form of monetization in video games. But I don't know, like when I think of like, is it morally bad? I suppose you could argue, yeah. But then I'm like, as an adult, right? The problem is these are aimed at kids, and kids get access to it, don't they? So it's like, you know.
However, what you define as predatory is ultimately subjective. There are things I don't think are predatory, and some that I find extremely so. This will be reflected in the tier list, so let's break it down. The first category will be called mild. These are the practices I think can still be argued as predatory, but I ultimately don't really have a problem if some of them are in the game, which I'll explain why when I get to it. The second tier is what I call the risky category. These are the tactics that were implemented on the conscious decision from the developers that didn't need to be there, and are the very definition of what I think is predatory.
Okay, I like this separation here because you'll have some people who argue that every form of microtransaction shouldn't, and it's a decision, and it shouldn't be there. But these games have to, if they're free, they have to make profit, right? They have to make profit, especially if they're live service games that they're paying for server stuff and updates. They have to make profit. But there is a good distinction there, right, of stuff that's profitable and we'll put them in the green, and then stuff where it's like, hey, this is going to put us really in the green, so let's fucking take the piss. Yeah, that's a good distinction.
There are two items in the deep end tier. These are what I think to be the worst of the
Whose rating went up because Cantarella had a muff out.
worst, and things that I actively campaign against in my reviews that should be minimized
games
as
with
much
live
as
service are
possible,
predatory by essence, yeah.
and ones that actively hurt my enjoyment of a game. They're quite broad subjects, so I guess you just have to wait and see. This is how I would subjectively categorize predatory practices in gacha games, so let's dive into the list. We'll start off with the mild tier, with something that's pretty harmless if you ask me. Login bonuses and daily missions. These are usually menial tasks that you can knock out in like 5 minutes or less. It's a light way to incentivize regular logins to a game.
Yeah, I think as systems go, it's definitely on the low end. It's designed in a particular way, as I say. I think logins are like that thing. It's all to get your brain working in a particular way. This is the core element of retention, right? It gets you coming back each day, even if there's nothing to do. It gets you coming back just to get those little rewards, right? But again, it's those little rewards that keep you chasing bigger rewards and stuff, right? But this isn't exclusive to gacha. So many games do this now, right? So many games do login bonuses. It's just a normal way of gaming now, isn't it?
By themselves, I don't really have a problem with these. There are cases where the best rewards are locked behind the final days of a login streak, and I think there's absolutely something that can be said about that. Overall, login bonuses are pretty tame. The stamina system is yet another player retention method that's pretty much baked into every gacha game. There are many ways to implement this. Some games might max out your stamina reserve in less than 24 hours to encourage 2 logins in a single day, and some that don't. Regardless of how it's done, the stamina system represents a major source of progression for your account. The daily missions and spending stamina usually are the 2 biggest sources to level up your account.
For me, I think about stamina, right? And at first, I'm like, it's just fundamentally bad. Being able to overclock or save stamina, whatever the game calls it, I think is a good thing. I think it just depends on how stamina is consumed in a game and what consumes stamina as well. Because I suppose there is an argument to say that it gives you a focus for particular things to do, right? But if everything consumes stamina, then stamina can be a bit of an issue depending on how much options the game gives you to re-up your stamina in game for mat-wise, like unlockables, whatever you want to call them in the game. You know, the thing that tops up your stamina, your energy, whatever it might be. But yeah, I don't know. I think it all depending on how the game deals with stamina, right? Stamina is there to due to CN law, I believe so. I think it was to limit game time, right?
Count. They give a ton of player XP relative to all other repeatable activities in the game. This is, of course, habit formation at its finest. You want to progress fast in a gacha game? Simply do your dailies and spend stamina. You can exchange stamina for in-game materials, but obviously...
That's why... Not only do you have stamina linked to your stuff, it's usually most games, one of your dailies is spend a set amount of your stamina, right? You know, it's not that the game's just trying to get you to log on to do that. It's encouraging you to also do that with secondary rewards, right?
Play at a controlled rate.
These are those psychological ding, 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 ding. You know, it's like the mouse being given the cheese every time it does what the scientists want it to do, right? You know? We're like, yes! Another piece of cheese! Thank you, overlords!
Wouldn't it be much more player-friendly to just erase the system and let players farm something for as much as they want? Yes. Yes, it would. When there's a stamina system, right? You don't get to play at your own pace. You get to play at the pace in which the developers let you.
Yeah.
I personally don't have a problem with battle passes and its premium paid track. Battle passes have been normalized in a lot of games across many genres. Yep. I'm okay with paid players having accelerated progression through additional activities. In terms of additional purchases, it's in my opinion one of the least insidious ways to monetize and retain users. Alongside daily logins, I mostly don't have a problem with these tactics by themselves.
It all depends on what you get in the battle pass as well, though, right? It depends on what you get in the battle pass, which depends on its level of insidiousness. Is insidiousness even a word?
There's a very big caveat I'll mention later, but you'll just have to wait and see. You may have noticed that some in-game events have a weird time gate on what portions of the event are unlocked, usually releasing a few levels every few days. What about why is there a weekly cap on how many times you can farm?
Yeah, fuck that shit. Time-gated stuff in events, I'm never usually a big fan of, but it depends on how often you get those time gates. If you can sometimes just spread an event over a little bit longer and it maybe reduces the burnout if it's a chunky event and the game's like, all right, you've done a lot. I guess I'm not to have an issue with that. Yeah, I'm like, you know, like going back, like when I think of like Wuthering Waves and you'd have like, there'd be like 8 challenges and it's really not much there and you like do a set amount and then it's like you've got to wait a certain amount of hours to come back into the next one. A lot of games do it. I'm never really a big fan of that, to be fair. I get why they do it. They don't want you to front load all the content, do they? It's another retention thing, isn't it?
Boss drop. Wouldn't it be better if that cap wasn't there? You'd be absolutely correct. All of the mentioned tactics so far aren't necessarily for monetizing you, but rather for player retention. Yeah. It's vitally important for an always online.
Oh my god, he's playing Black Beacon. It's all for player retention. More player retention, more likely you am to spend in the future. You know, it's like where you know when you get, I don't know if you guys have ever been to IKEA. It's set out in a certain way that they make you go around you can't just like go in and get to the thing you want to do. You have to walk through so many other things, and it's because the more time you spend in the shop, the more likely you am to pass something else that catches your eye, and you're likely to spend, the more time you spend in the game, the more likely you are to spend, right?
Game to have a steady player base. Even if you're free to play, you're still a valuable asset to the company. You may contribute to the community in some way and spread the word to newcomers.
True.
Besides, as long as you remain a player, there's always the opportunity that you'll decide to spend money in the future. The reason I don't really have a problem with the tactics mentioned so far is that it's understandable some of them are in place in order to retain players.
You better use these funds for Ines skin, Mr. Streamer.
Yo, Just Casual, yo, dude, thank you very much for the super chat for the 14. Guys, can we get some love in the chat for Just Casual? I appreciate you reminding me. I was meant to buy it the day it came out, man. I just genuinely forgot. I am going to get the skin. I need to get it. Guys, pester me in Discord as well later to do that. Just Casual, thank you very much for the 14. Really appreciate the continued support. You are an absolute legend and a squire, sir. Thank you.
Here's my challenge to you. For tomorrow, just don't log in to any of the gacha games you play. That's it.
Oh, God. Hey, trying to break my habits here, bro. Come on now. I can go cold turkey. Come on now.
It's kind of like skipping class. Once you do it once, then you realize that you can just keep doing it.
This is a fact. I said this before, right, about Wuthering Waves. You know when you soft quit a game, right? You know when you soft quit a game of like, once a game stops you coming in, so like you've got your dailies, your login, you have your standard login, then your dailies, and then sometimes a little bit of busy work. The busy work gets boring, so you're there for the login and the dailies. Then the dailies get a little bit more too much like chores, and you stop doing the dailies, but you come back for the login, and then you stop doing the logins, and the next thing you know, you skip the day, and then you skip 2 days, and then a week goes by, and you end up, you know, that connection's lost, right? So like these are, you know, as somebody, and we've all gone through it, when you stop doing that in a game, it's easy to just start pulling away from the game, and next thing you know, 2 months has gone by and you ain't played the game and you're just playing something else now. So these are all mechanisms to keep us there, right? But just casual, thank you very much for the super chat, dude.
When you wake up in the morning, sit at your phone or computer and realize that you can do whatever you want without needing to bother with dailies or login bonuses, it'll feel like a weight that has been lifted from your shoulder. Power creep and feature creep. These specifically refer to newer release characters having better stats and complex kits. Balancing this factor is quite difficult. As a gacha game, it needs to release new characters.
God, FGO's menus just look like somebody threw up on the screen, don't they? They are vile. They are so vile.
To entice new and existing players to stick around. And the game must find some way to market or innovate on the game's existing mechanics. Aside from aesthetics, a game might absolutely try to sell a character by making their damage numbers bigger. That might work out in the short term, but there are long-term ramifications for this.
Beautiful game.
If everyone is godlike, then no one is. A character can only...
I've been saying this. It's not like I'm saying anything that's prophetic or anything amazing, but I've been saying this. This is why 4 stars are needed in games. This is why it's a shame that Wuthering Waves doesn't get more 4 stars. People are like, well, why do I need these 4 stars when I've got plenty of 5-star free-to-play options and I've got Rover and all this, that, and the other? But one, that can help for variety, so I don't have to keep using the MC to give me the options, the free-to-play option, if you will. 2, it just makes the 5 stars feel a bit more special, and it's just nice sometimes to be able to get a full max pot of a character because they're a 4-star and you can get them through the free-to-play means, right? And it's the same thing of when it comes to the sex appeal characters, right? You know? The characters, it's okay having some goonerish characters in a game here and there, but the gooner value and the sex appeal's lost when everybody's got the sex appeal, right? That's why, like, in a game like Arknights or in Wuthering Waves, I think they do a good balance of it there, right? Where a lot of characters will have cool designs and there's a character that might just be a little bit more on the sexy side. It makes them stand out that bit more for that reason, because everybody else isn't a hooah. You know what I mean? So it just... I agree with this.
Be considered powerful when compared to something not so powerful. Feature creep can actually be even more insidious than power creep. As the game expands and releases more modes and content, there's going to be more menus to go through, more materials to collect, and currencies to keep track of. As a longtime player, you would have been able to adapt to the new changes bit by bit.
Coming in new.
However,
to
a
old
newcomer
game,
is suddenly hit with all these things at once, which may cause some confusion on how to navigate the game. Just compare the complexity of character kits from ones that were released at launch and those a few years later. Your tolerance of power creep and feature creep will differ person to person. However, I don't really have a problem with these, as these are natural consequences of the game showing its age.
I agree with that as well. I've said this before. I think power creep's inevitable. It's how fast it happens, how much it jumps, how often old characters literally become useless, and how much the game travels with the creep as well. I think it's not only inevitable, I think it's kind of necessary to have some form of power creep and feature creep just to keep new things coming to the game, right? If you're playing it every day, you want things to feel, to have improvements, things to feel better. I do think it is a positive thing, but it has to be done right. It's the speed and how much it happens, right?
Unavoidable, and at times even unintentional by the developers. I'm going to throw this one in the mild category, and because I kind of want to talk about it. Paid cosmetics.
Okay.
The gaming industry has more or less accepted and normalized paid cosmetics in-game. Some of these can cost $20, and that's just kind of the reality of things now. I don't have a problem with these, regardless of how much it's priced. The thing about cosmetics is that its pricing is highly subjective.
Regardless of how much it's priced. Now, that is true, it is subjective. I definitely do have an issue with the pricing. I do. I think, now, again, it's subjective. And it's a choice. It's a cosmetic, right? At the end of the day, it's right what people say. It does not affect how the game plays to you. But I can't get behind the idea of a cosmetic in a game if it's a one-touch price. I know through a gacha system it can be even more. But of a cosmetic in a game, and this is rich coming from a gacha player, right? Being equivalent, if not more, than the price of an entire box game, right? That you can argue that this character having a slight different look to them should cost 50 quid. I remember when Jinxie's skin came out in Wuthering Waves, right? And I was like, the skin looks great. I don't think it looks good as an original skin because it's just not my style, but the effects and everything look great, right? And I think without your top-up bonuses, without all of the little extras, right? You know, if you were just straight up paying for it and you'd already bought all your currency and you got no top-up bonuses, you was looking at about 50 quid when it after the initial discount that you got with it, right? If you bought it, it was about 50 quid. And I was like, I think that's pricey, right? I'm not saying it's not worth it to people, but I think that's pricey. And I was getting called a broke bitch constantly, right? People were like, you just bro, if you're broke, say so, man. If you can't afford it, just don't buy it. You know what I mean? And I was like, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, you can't tell me objectively that £50, right? $60, $70, even more in like Canadian dollars, even more in some currencies, is a fair now. I know fair value is dependent on how much the person wants to pay. The market dictates the value. But come on now, right? That's taking the piss. So I do think, you know, that again, it's totally subjective, but I still do think some stuff for me is objectively, you can say subjectively it has value, but objectively that is expensive, right? You know, if someone turned around to you and went, oh yeah, you know, your Big Mac meal is going to cost 45 quid. You're going to be like, yeah, that's fucking objectively expensive. Somebody might go, well, it's worth it for me because I really like Big Macs, but there's no way of getting away from the fact that that is way more expensive than it should be, right?
How much do you think a skin like this is worth? Sellers want to sell it at the highest they can sell it for, and buyers want to buy it for the lowest price they can buy it for. It is dictated
by the market.
There's the age-old argument that cosmetics isn't gameplay, except what if you literally play the game in order to look the coolest? The one thing about paid cosmetics is that it has to be more desirable than the base version, meaning that there's now an incentive to purposely design the base version of something in an inferior way and sell the cosmetics as extra. It just falls on you whether...
Interesting. I think that depends on how scummy the game developers want to be, right? Do they actively want to make a character look bad to sell average-looking skins, or do they want to make a really good-looking character and sell awesome-looking skins? They showed a little bit of Girls Frontline 2 there. I think that's a game that is a bit, like, base characters look a little bit iffy. I think some games definitely do have an issue with that, with characters looking generic. Like, when I look to something like Arknights, I don't think they do. When I look to Wuthering Waves, I think Jinxie's skin looks better than the freaking skin you get in the game. I think with Zenless as well, I think some of the skins don't actually look better. I think they're just going a bit more fan service route, aren't they? Which I think it doesn't necessarily have to look better. Sometimes just having like a bikini skin, that allows people then to get fan service without the character being half naked, right? So I suppose you can look at it a different way.
You're okay with paying the money to buy the cosmetics. Now we move on to the risky tier. This tier lies in all the tactics that fit my very definition of predatory. Let me start by ripping off a band-aid. Any gacha system, regardless of how it's implemented, is predatory.
True.
There is no wiggle room for me on this subject.
No,
if you can pay real money to obtain more gacha currency, it fits here. I don't care how generous its pull income is. I don't care if it has a separate weapon banner or it has incredibly high drop rates. By nature,
this is all fair, right? It doesn't, for me, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's morally bad. People might not like this, right? Because you're actively engaging with it. It's definitely a system that's trying to trigger all of these psychological traits, right? Playing the lottery is kind of predatory, you know? Doing any sort of gambling, betting on football teams, this is all predatory, and they're all things that you could definitely argue that are negative, and some people would say they're immoral, right? And that's totally fair. But yeah, they're all optional things to opt in to do, aren't they? I do think, obviously, the more we accept them, the more pervasive they are in the gaming space. But yeah, gacha itself is just straight up predatory, isn't it?
There's no conceivable way I can agree that a gacha system is not predatory. But let's entertain some edge cases. One of my most beloved gacha games of all time is Limbus Company. I put in a lot of hours into it, and I like it a lot. This game has the dispense mechanic, where after the most recent character has been on a raid-up banner, then you can spend farmable shards to just get them from the menu, allowing you to bypass the gacha entirely. You get the shards by doing daily missions and grinding the roguelike mode.
Exactly, you could look at it with like cookies on websites, right? You go into a website, the website's free, they sell you data, and then you get pinged with a bunch of shit trying to promote you other stuff, right? You know, you could argue that there's a predatory nature to that. They're allowing you access to this thing for free, but a bunch of other companies are going to be constantly, maybe potentially emailing you, maybe using ads through Google to push other products on you and stuff like that.
You'll still need 400 of it, and buying the premium battle pass does accelerate the rate that you get it. But still, allowing players to do this is pretty insane. Does that mean that Limbus Company's gacha system is not predatory? No, I disagree. This is a very slippery slope to go down. You know the saying, you give an inch, they take a mile? Let's assume that the majority of players agree that the game is not predatory because of this feature. What if a new developer sees this and thinks, if the players don't think it's predatory, then maybe we can do something similar. However, one change they made in their game is that instead of the 400 shards to get the character, it's now 800.
This is all based on success as well. I remember saying this before when I was talking about Wuthering Waves, because there were some content creators out there that were saying that when the first Game of the Year awards came around for like all of these different mobile categories and stuff, right, that Wuthering Waves should have won. And there was people actively out there saying that if it did win, that it would help change the industry because other games would look at it and change the way they do things because it's getting recognition. Companies don't give a shit about Game of the Year awards. They'll put it on their box and they'll put it in their titles and in their Twitters and stuff like that as a little way to say, look what we won. But what they'll look at is success, right? Success dictates what other companies do. There's a reason why the Hoyo system is incredibly popular because it was successful. Whatever game comes out next and is ultra successful, like a Nanta. Imagine a Nanta's incredibly successful. Some games will probably try and follow suit because they're like, that works, right? We'll try and follow that. It's got fuck all to do with awards. It's about whether a game makes a shit ton of money doing certain things and other companies go, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Would you still think that's okay? Now what if a third company takes a look, does the same in their game, but the shard requirement is now 1200? Well, people argue that as long as you can farm it for the shards to bypass the gacha, it's not predatory. So what's the problem? As you can see, as soon as you start entertaining the idea that gacha is not predatory, it opens up a lot of room for developers to get sneaky and try skirting around the definition. And that's why I can't be budged on the subject. I will continue to enjoy Limbus Company. However, at its core, it's classified as a gacha game, and that makes it predatory. The next one is straightforward. I call it the sunk cost offer. You may have noticed that in pretty much every mobile game, there is an extremely high value pack you can buy for as little as $1 for new.
I mentioned this earlier, we don't need to go over it again, right? They give you these super cheap bundles because as soon as you spend, you're more likely to spend in the future.
Players. You might think, well, it's just a harmless offer for some ice breaking. It's a good gesture for new players to get a head start. I'd be dumb to turn it down. I mean, it looks so much better in comparison to the other purchases. Now, this may seem...
it's 2,000% off. You see that in some games, like 2,400% off. It's like, bro, that price point never existed ever before. Shut the fuck up. I'm going to buy it, though.
Harmless on the surface, but there's a very specific reason why it's there. Directly tied to the idea of sunk cost fallacy, this is meant to exploit the human cognitive bias of loss aversion. Studies have found that players who spend money, even if it's little as $1, are more likely to make another purchase in the future. If you spend any money, you're now invested. I already spent $1, why not $5 more? If I stop now, that would be a waste of the $1 I spent. I played a lot of gacha games where I did buy the $1 pack, and then after stopped playing in a week. I basically thought of the situation like this. I went into the store, browsed around, bought a pack of gum for $1, and now I'm walking back out. You can walk out at any time if you think the game is not worth playing. As long as you understand why the sunk cost offer is there, you'll be able to avoid this psychological trap. You may have also noticed that a lot
Again, as he said there, yeah, I agree.
Games have a 3 daily or weekly pack sitting in the cash shop for you to collect, luring you in with that delicious red dot. The reason why games do this is to increase your...
Slap the free stuff at the bottom of the store, boom, you got to peruse the rest of the store. It's the IKEA thing, that is. That's the IKEA thing. You need to walk through the rest of the store.
It's natural to have the mindset that since you're in an environment where you're expected to buy something, then you have a higher chance of buying something. This ties in with the mere exposure effect in psychology. By simply increasing one's exposure to something, it increases their preference for it. The free pack is meant to make you feel more familiar with the UI and layout of the cash shop. In certain games, you even have to scroll down the menu to see the free pack past all the other paid offers. And I assure you, this is also intentional. In terms of predatory practices, I think this one falls on the less egregious side. Besides, you can even make the argument that it's good that these packs are there.
I ain't got an issue with this, right? You know, again, end of the day, a free-to-play game, it's going to incentivize you to make money, right? They have to. They're a business. Otherwise, you don't get these kind of games and you don't get free barriers to entry, right? So this sort of stuff, I've got no issue with. Again, at the end of the day, I've got no issue with the gacha systems themselves. They're predatory, yeah. But, hey, it's an optional thing, right? It's an optional thing. It's a consensual choice to jump into this stuff, right?
After all, you're still getting some bonus goodies every day. I mean,
It's
economically
separating the
speaking,
kids
you
out of the
absolutely
situation
should
that
take
we
the
need to
free
do,
pack.
right?
There's no reason not to. Me, though, I just take my freebies and get out of there in 5 seconds. Another case where as long as you know why it's there, you'll be able to understand things better. This is a pretty big one. Every gacha game these days has their own premium proprietary currency that you collect in order to pull more on the gacha.
Okay.
However, there's no way to directly buy more pulls with real money. Instead, you have to buy the currency first, then convert that into pulls. Bonus points if the currency converts to the gacha tokens at an uneven ratio.
Well, I'm not defending it, but this was like when laws were brought into certain countries, kind of push for this. Now, a lot of not gacha games in general have done it for a while, but it was to obfuscate and kind of like get around the idea of, well, we're not allowing you to buy these things, so it technically doesn't count, because what you're doing is you're buying these pink crystals, and then these pink crystals turn into the blue crystals, and then the blue crystals buy you these cards, and then you use the cards to get the characters. So technically, you're not actually using dollars, pounds, or euros to buy these things. You're using cards, which you use blue crystals to buy, and you got them through pink crystals, so, you know.
The effects of this is quite obvious. The proprietary currency is meant to obfuscate the actual cost of in-game items. It's an extra step, more mental gymnastics to figure out if buying something is worth it. In fact, the FTC recently cracked down on Genshin's practices for this exact reason. It reveals the ugly truth that when you see the result of this practice being stripped away, how likely would you spend for a 10 pull when you can see that pressing the buttons costs?
I was going to say, this come into Genshin now, didn't it? Like, where you can actually see the monetary value of things, right? Because you will, if you look at a pull and it's like, damn, 250, rather than, oh, it's 150 crystals or whatever the fuck the game wants to use, you know what I mean?
It's $20. Proprietary currency serves one other purpose. In some games' cash shops, you may have seen something like this, where the game claims to be running a big sale on select items, but in reality, it is the actual price just having a fake markup. Having fake discounts with non-existent original prices like this is actually illegal in a lot of countries, in order to protect consumers from deceptive practices. However, if you switch that real dollar amount to the proprietary currency, that becomes a loophole in these regulations. The developers can simply say, look, it's priced in in-game currency, not in real-life dollars,
right?
Which is exactly something Infinity Nikki has done in a past update. This next topic has some slight ties to proprietary currency, but it puts
We don't sell pulls for dollars. We sell pink crystals, bro. Come on. And then you buy blue crystals, bro.
Own spin on it. Why is it that the amount of gacha currency needed to pull once is a weird amount that's always slightly uneven? Genshin's 160, Arknights 600, Reverse 1999 with 180.
This ain't even just a gacha thing though, man. This is just gaming stuff in general, right? When like games will sell, whether it be something like COD points, and then you use those COD points to buy something. Everything's usually set to this bundle's just, it's just under what you need to get the thing, and this one's a decent bit more, that so when you either get two or you get this one, and then once you've done the thing, you've got some left over, so you're like, shit, what do I do with these? Do I just waste them? And then you need to do the same thing again, or I need to get how does this work? You know what I mean?
Mekarashi with 88 or Honkai Impact with 280. I assure you, these are not selected at random. What abusive pricing does is that it's again meant to throw off your calculations and how much you need to budget in order to plan your pulls. Let's say that every gacha game came to an agreement and unanimously decided to switch the number of currency needed per pull to 100. A nice, even number.
It would be nice. It would be nice.
Now,
to be fair though, I suppose this is what the whole bomb, right, is people maybe with not the best math. I don't have the best math, but making quick decisions on being like, back of the hand kind of math, back of the fag packet kind of math, and then buying it and then being like, oh, fuck, But again, that is on the player. But again, they're psychological triggers. They're doing it for a reason, right?
If I asked you, quick, how many Primogens do you need for 9 pulls? Easy, 900. What about 26? 2,600.
Quick math.
60 pulls? 6,000. But if we were to change it back to 160, things are suddenly not so simple. Now, you can still pull up a calculator and get the answers that way, but this pricing scheme serves as an artificial barrier to make you go through one more mental obstacle to get the results you want. Abusive pricing can also extend to the aforementioned proprietary currency. Let's travel back to 2023, back when I still played Genshin. Say that I wanted to buy the skin for Ayaka. When discounted, this went on sale for 1,350 Genesis crystals. I want to ask, how much should a player expect to pay to buy the skin in real-life dollars? Well, taking a glance at the top-up shop, you'll notice that there's no one combination of packs that...
This is what I was just on about. Just like, if something costs 15 quid, it's like, yeah, you got to spend 18 quid, bro. You know? There's no roundabout way.
Perfectly matches the amount needed. It's always a bit over or not enough. Besides, what if a player didn't have the first top-up bonus? What if a player already bought a couple rounds of the monthly pass and already has some crystals saved up? Notice just how hard it is to pinpoint how much a player is expected to pay, as their situation depends on certain other factors. Even after you bought the skin, you're gonna have some crystals left over in your inventory. While you can convert it to primos...
Question, actually. I'll just casual, you're Canadian, right? You know, in Canada, is VAT added on at the till or on the actual price? Because in America, it's I think it's different depending on states. All right, like, so you'll go buy something. I don't know, you're going to buy whatever, and it's $20, and then you get to the till, and then they add the tax onto it, don't they? Whereas, like, in the UK, and I think across Europe as well, when, like, you know, you buy some, the VAT's added on, so it's 23 quid, let's say, it's 24 quid, right? So you don't think, oh, you know what I mean? Do they do that in Canada as well? Or is that just a US thing now? What other countries do that as well? I think US will add it usually at the checkout. Canadians have money. You pay tax at the counter as well, do you? Okay, interesting. Okay, so it's a bit more of an NA thing in general then. Okay.
At a 1-to-1 ratio, you can't convert it back. So if you're someone that has some idea of long-term planning, then you likely just keep your remaining Genesis crystals there in case you need it in the future. So you just leave it there in weird...
I think most countries do. It does happen in Europe. Games currently are $80 instead of 70, like the Americans say.
Unspendable amounts. When the time comes when you do need to buy more, then that messes with the total amount needed.
Obviously, like, if you grew up like that, you'd just be used to it, right? You'd work it out. But, like, I just think it just seems such an alien concept to me. That does, of like, I'll buy something, it's 20 quid, and I get to the till, and it's more than 20 quid. It just seems it seems an unusual way to do things.
All over again. I want to finish off the risky tier with a short story.
UK, then, yeah.
A while back, I was looking to buy a new pair of sneakers. This led me down to a rabbit hole looking at lots of brands and reviews. And eventually, out of curiosity, I looked up the high-end sneaker lineups like the Travis Scott Air Jordans. I was shocked just how much a pair cost. I thought...
Bro, those trainers are so fucking disgusting. These ones here. I'm sorry. They're vile.
Who in their right mind would spend thousands of dollars on a pair of sneakers? What a waste of money. Turns out, if a sneaker collecting enthusiast saw it, they would go, well, yeah, you want the high-end sneakers with memorabilia sentiments or high...
I do think that's a thing that changes with age as well. Not everybody, but, like, for me, you know, when I was a teen, and, like, maybe, actually, I don't know if I grew out of it by my 20s. When I was a teen, I used to, like, I like branded clothes, right? I did used to like spending, you know, a lot of money on, like, branded stuff, but now, man, Primani, baby, take me to Primark, you know, and I'll be happy. Mate, when it comes to trainers, I do like to get, like, you know, like Air Maxes and stuff like that, and I like my trainers to be nice, but it's not even for, like, the brand, it's more just for the comfort and the look, really. But yeah, man, I couldn't spend a lot of money on clothes nowadays. I can't do it. I'd rather just have multiple items. You know, I'd rather get, like, 3 hoodies for like 40 quid than spend 80 quid for one hoodie. And obviously, if it's like a really cool looking hoodie, then maybe I'll contemplate it. But, like, nah, man. Especially when not most of my new clothes I buy for the gym anyway. I'm like, if I can buy like 3 t-shirts for 12 quid, yes, please.
Performance, you gotta pay up. This is just normal for a sneaker of this caliber. When I started playing gacha games in a very similar fashion, I was shocked by how much getting a single rare character would cost if you purely spend money on the top-up packs. Turns out, years later, I became accustomed to it. It's now a normal expectation that if you buy the top-up packs in the gacha game to pull for a new character...
This is true, like, go back 10 years, yeah. Maybe even less. The idea of potentially spending like 250, 300 quid on Valorant for skins, or 250 quid on Wuthering Waves, to me, I'd be like, never. you know? And here I am thinking, ha, I don't spend lots of money on clothes, and I'm buying JPEGs. You know?
You should be expected to spend upwards of $100
true,
or
Ken,
$200.
true.
Someone unfamiliar with gacha games might argue the same thing I did when I looked up sneakers. Who in their right mind would spend hundreds of dollars for a virtual character in a video game? What a waste of money. In which someone like me would respond, yeah, it's been like this since the birth of gacha games all the way back in the mid-2010s. I guess it does seem kinda unreasonable, except this is just how things are. This is completely normal. It's also the result of price gouging that the lower price packs look better in comparison. I think most rational players would see buying the top-up packs as the very last resort after they've exhausted all other options. There was a $45 pack in Girls Frontline 2 that let you select from a pool of limited dolls and their signature weapon. That's an insane offer. You'd be going upwards of $200 to $300 if you whale for them instead. What about this $30 pack in Reverse 1999? Now, let me be clear about something. I don't have a problem with whaling in a video game. However, a fine line that I draw is that you must be aware of how much you're spending at all times. The moment you lose track how much you spend is when you start blurring the lines between a fair purchase and gambling. So now, we end up in the deep end. There are only 2 entries in this category, but they're quite broad subjects, so we'll start with
Selector is
FOMO,
definitely the best
or
value in that
fear of
regards
missing
for me.
out. I absolutely despise FOMO elements in video games, except FOMO can take form in so many ways that you kinda get lost. The basic concept is that the game is creating artificial scarcity by making certain items or content time-limited with no predictable period where they'll come back, if at all. Here are the sources that I consider to be the main aspects of FOMO and how they hurt my experience with a gacha game. The first is flash sales. These pop-ups will lure you with a limited time deal that usually expires really fast. You better get it now or it might disappear forever. This plays on a fake sense of urgency to nudge.
I get this, what he's saying here. I don't mind these so much. You know what I do mind though? You know when the game constantly puts them in your face? Like that does my head in. I don't like that. Like, a game that's kind of like that, he's solo leveling, right? Like you jump on the game, it's like, it's desperately trying to get you into the store all the time.
You to make a purchase. Remember when I talked about daily logins and battle passes that by themselves?
To the point where they'll even give you like a little bit of in-game currency. Come to the store. You don't have to buy anything, just come to the store, you know?
Else I don't have a problem with. Well, if we were to include a limited time item in said login or battle passes, then that does become an issue for me. Now, limited items can come in a variety of ways, such as a player profile border, an avatar, a player skin, or a special plaque to display on your profile. The question becomes, how much do you care about this thing? If you don't care about cosmetic items and player profile add-ons, then this sort of thing won't faze you. However, if you can't get over just how these items may never be available again...
I think when it comes to cosmetic items, yeah, apart from like MMOs and RPGs, cosmetics don't bother me too much. And that extends to gacha games as well, actually. Especially because in gacha games, you tend to rotate your squads a lot. So even though there's a lot of cosmetics in Arknights that are great, and I'm going to be getting the Inez cosmetic, and I'm probably going to get some others, right? Do you know where cosmetics get me? First-person shooters. First-person shooters. Like say, like Valorant, Call of Duty. You know what I mean? Like, you give me a gun that I'm going to be using probably every day, and you give me a really cool-looking skin, probably going to buy it. And I'm probably going to be a lot more inclined to buy that cosmetic over the skin of a character that I might play 30 to 40% of the time when I'm playing the game. You know what I mean?
And in the future,
better value
that might just
myself.
cause you to pay extra attention to your logins or feel obligated to participate in these events. Let's talk about limited time gacha characters next. It's a natural assumption that once a limited character banner ends, then you have to wait for an indefinite amount of time before you will have the opportunity to get them again. How many limited characters and how often they release?
I think Wooer, so far, obviously it's going to extend as there's more characters, right? I think that's one thing Wuthering Waves has done a decent thing. Reruns seem to come around quite often, right? You're not waiting too long, it seems now, in Wuthering Waves for a rerun of a unit. But I think as you get more units, most games, the rerun, like, the time in between that unit getting rerun gets extended, right? In some games, it's just like, you know, it's massive anyway.
It's completely up to the discretion of the developer. I will say, there are games where limited characters become part of the standard pool after a while. So even if they won't be available, you can still possibly get them when a non-raid up spooks you. There's also the matter of limited time events, given that gacha games put a big emphasis on world building, considering that it's trying to sell its characters to you. a lot of the story content introduced in events can contribute to that.
You're not wrong, Easy.
What makes absolutely no sense to me is making said story content only viewable.
And sometimes, depending on when a rerun's dropped, it can increase FOMO, right? Because if there's a really good unit that comes in with, like, you know, a bunch of other useful units, it can be a bit of a bitch as well, especially when it's an incredibly useful support, right? You know, like maybe like a really useful across the board character that drops in. I'm not just talking about a specific support. It's like, you know, I don't know, maybe like a fucking shorekeeper kind of character. And it's like, oh man, that coming around is really useful for people who haven't got it. But then it comes with a bunch of other, you know, it can all be swings and roundabouts
during their event period, especially when the story can expand on the game's lore or explain an important subplot. It's like gatekeeping players from enjoying the full extent of the world building. Seems rather counterintuitive. FOMO elements greatly impact my enjoyment of a game, and I tend to rate highly of games that don't have as many tactics related to it. For example, one of my favorite games I'm playing
it's good the character's back, but it's like, fuck, bro, you know what I mean? You know exactly what you're doing there, you know?
Now is Reverse 1999.
You're basically saying, yeah, I'm going to jerk you off. I'm going to stick my finger up your ass as well. Don't say it. I ain't going to tell you about that, though.
The majority of the newly released characters will become part of the standard pool after 3 patches. And when older events get archived, you can just view it at any time. Of course, this is not the only gacha game that does this, and I do appreciate it when there's pushback against this kind of practice. As you can see, creating artificial scarcity can be extremely beneficial to retention and monetization. FOMO is unfortunately one of the things that the developer has full control over. They get to choose what and when players get to access certain content. And that's why it's one of my most disliked predatory practices. Now, aside from FOMO, there's one more topic I want to talk about. Something so insidious that it overshadows every other subject on this list.
Okay.
One more trick to ensnare you into keeping you playing and spending money on the game. One tactic...
What was that there? Is that lads?
Something so insidious that it overshadows every other subject on this list. One more trick...
Is this Love and Deep's? What the fuck is this? Is this Love and Deep's race? What is this? This is Love and Deep's race. Okay.
To ensnare you into keeping you playing and spending money on the game.
How often do you do shit like that?
Much more
I didn't even... I knew there was combat, but it's like... That actually looked like gameplay. Don't download, lads.
And impactful, as it permeates every aspect of your moment playing a game. Surprisingly enough, the game company is typically not the one that reinforces this. I'm talking about tribalism.
Oh, PvP. Let's go fight. Wait a minute. How? Okay, all right. Let's have... Okay. Curious to see how this relates to everything else.
When you play a game for a very long time, you become accustomed to it. It becomes part of your personality. In a way, it becomes an integral portion to your life that you would defend at all costs. You can't imagine living your life without doing your dailies or interacting with the community. And when there's outside forces disturbing...
It's at that point when you think, yeah, I think I should get laid. You know?
That piece, it makes you just want to lash out, put the opposition in their place, and go back to the safety of your sanctuary that is your game. One of the biggest challenges I face when I review gacha games is coming up with actual valid critiques. The problem with critiquing a game, especially one that's well known and has a long following behind it, is that even when you're saying things that has validity to it, there will be a vocal crowd that will deny everything negative you say. It doesn't matter.
Stop playing the game, bro. Go play something else. Stop being a fucking hater. You know what I mean? You're just a hater. You're a shill from another company. I think a perfect example of that recently, right, which, hey, look, I've been saying it for a while, man. The Kuro community loves to, the Wuthering Waves community, should I say, loves to pretend that they're different somehow, that they're willing to accept criticism. Hey, perfect example, 2.7, a lot of people not happy that there's no combat. People fucking actively, CCs as well, telling people, just go play another game. And some of these CCs were doing the opposite when people were critiquing Honkai Star Rail. And people were saying, maybe go play another game. And they were being told that that's a retarded argument to have. And then verbatim use that argument for Wuthering Waves, you know? And it says a lot when you, like, say you've got Saint Tonta saying, this fucking blows. And the community is like, nah. It's like, okay, yo, you have gone fucking far too west now.
That you're right. It's that they don't want you to be right. Let's say you've played a single gacha game for years already. When you see someone reviewing the game, a thought that might come up is, what gives you the right to critique my game? There's the age-old argument in the MMO community that you need to spend 100 hours on a game before your opinion is considered valid. And you can imagine with the sheer number of competition in the gacha market right now, all with their...
that argument is such a shit argument. Now, I think if you're going to review a game, I think if it's a game that's a box price game you should complete it. Especially if you're making if that's what you do. You review games. You're a review body. You're a journalist or you're a content creator. I think you should complete a game before you review it, right? Review is different to critique. And I think if it's a live service game, you should play at least through the main section of initial launch content, right? And then review it. At least experience everything the game has to offer through to end game. If you're going to review it. Now, if you're going to critique a game, in my opinion, you can critique a game within minutes of playing a game, right? If a game doesn't engage you within the first hour and you bounce because the gameplay is trash to you or whatever it might be, that's totally fine to do. Like, people treat critiques now like the reviews as if you didn't complete the game. How can you even critique it? It's like, bro, what are you on about? You know what I mean? It's two separate things.
Dedicated and loyal fans, we can imagine something similar taking place. This happens more often with older gachas as they have built up a more dedicated and loyal fan base that's more or less made the game part of their personality. Gacha tribalism is alive and real. This is my genuine advice to you. Your relationship with gaming companies is purely transactional. You can enjoy the game. You can spend money on it. You can buy their merch. You can go to their live events. Look,
I've got to simp for it, man. I've got to defend it. I've got to make it my personality. I've got to attack people. I have to be. Look, I'm not a fan of the game unless I'm acting like I'm on the board. If I'm not acting like I'm a shareholder, I'm not a fan. And if you don't act like that, you're not a fan either.
I got Snowbreak merch sitting on my desk right now. I don't have a problem when people enjoy a game as a hobby.
Unless you're acting like this game doing well is going to buy you a new yacht. Just saying.
The issue arises if you see the game or the company is anything more than that. Then I find that extremely
names on it,
problematic. Right? Online personalities can exacerbate this mindset even further.
Dwayne lets me use his yacht on the weekend, man. Shut the fuck up.
Further. When a game or community gets big enough, online moderators and content creators have a vested interest in keeping their status of authority. You may notice that once in a while, a post or two that criticizes the game goes missing or gets censored, or how certain content creators and influencers tend to consistently push a certain narrative really hard. Gacha X's devs really care about you, unlike the other developers. Gacha X is way better than Gacha Y. You become so sensitive to criticism that it's like if someone online made a simple comment, I think Gacha Y is really good. Your immediate reaction is,
it's the age-old, I like pancakes statement, right? So what you're saying, you hate waffles, you know? That's what people do a lot as well, don't they? They go, I really like this. Even when people are talking about it in a vacuum, and then other people act like, well, you're shitting on the other thing, right? Even if you're not. Like, a lot of the time people are, but even if you're not, that's when you've lost it.
Oh, so you hate Gacha X? Covering drama and rage bait content is extremely easy, and it often leads to a lot of views. I know this, and even this video is somewhat framed as so. However, when your exposure to the Gacha...
Don't tell that to the drama CCs though, right? And I want to clarify this as well. Criticism and talking about things going on this space isn't necessarily drama. I think we're all smart enough to know when people, like, they live in the darkness, right? They were born in the darkness, shall we say, like Bane, right? And people who just maybe adopt it, like Batman, right? There's a difference. But people will genuinely say that it's not... Now, I think if you are a drama creator, I think you have to have a bit of mental fortitude to deal with the bullshit from all angles. It's fucking easy. You know, it is easy to start calling people out, right? It's not hard to do. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have to have the glue and the proof to back your words up. Like, there's a difference, right? Or it is easy views, man. It really is. People act like it's not easy views to shit on specific video games, specific companies, specific groups of players. And this goes multiple ways as well. But it definitely is. You know, I'll hear this all the time where people, I'm like, I'm only doing this to improve the game. I don't think you are. I don't think you are personally, right? Maybe sometimes, maybe. And you're not wrong for saying it, but let's not pretend. And I also think that like people are, well, I could do so much better if I sucked up to this game. And I'm like, would you really though? I think that would take a lot more time and effort, and you'd have to be a part of the community for quite a while, and it'd take a bit of time where just coming in and shitting on it, you know, and throwing things around the room kind of gets attention. It does, you know what I mean? It does. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. Hey, I have no issue with drama farmers. You know, now and again, I've made videos where it could be considered drama, right? You know, I called out Kazahana. I've called out Saint in the past. You know, I do plenty of calling out companies. I've got no issue with it. I just think it's when sometimes people want to pretend that what they do is something it's not. I'm like, why? It don't matter. It's just YouTube content at the end of the day. You're not drowning kittens, bro. you're just making silly videos. If people take it too serious, and that's on them.
Space is nothing but drumming up reasons to be outraged. You have to understand how it affects you psychologically. If you really look deep and boil everything down, let's see which parties inducing gacha tribalism really benefits. The development company, moderators, and content creators, not the players.
Yep.
Online moderators will keep critiques of their game to a controlled amount to maintain their authoritative image. Content creators keep pushing their one-sided narrative as it drives easy views with rage bait and drama content. The company has no reason to interfere as it doesn't conflict with their interests. What better way to shield yourself from criticism than your own fans? What better way to feed into the echo chamber of toxic positivity than to keep unsuspecting fans in a constant state of hate and vitriol? To get easy views...
I do think, no, I've got to be fair to some of the companies here. I do think some of the companies engage in active moderation against some of this stuff, right? You know, it's in... And I know that it doesn't mean they're going to act on it necessarily. In a lot of user agreements, and in some content creation agreements with some companies, they will actively ask you not to disparage other games and other companies. They might ask you not to talk about them, but they'll actively ask you not to disparage them as well. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying they necessarily act on it as much as they should, or I don't think the companies are really the villains in this situation. And I think it can negatively affect them sometimes. Like, bad communities can make games look terrible. It can. And I don't always think that these bad communities are necessarily spending on the game, because they're spending too much time shitting on other people, because they've got character issues, if anything. I think the main beneficiaries from gacha tribalisms, content creators, and again, as I say, I don't take umbrage really with a content creator making a bit of cash because people want to get angry about stuff. But I think it's fair to say I think content creators are some of the biggest people who do the best out of it. You know what I mean?
And reinforce blind loyalty towards them and the game. As a player feeding into this tribalistic behavior, your emotional vulnerabilities are being exploited for their personal gain. The only losing...
I've actively been discouraged from playing where we're due to the community. Stockholm Gacha syndrome. People keep defending predatory practice, not realizing it opens the door for gacha companies to become more and more predatory too. Yeah, people tend to forget companies often don't actually see each other as enemies and want to have decent relationships with each other for future business opportunities. Exactly. Sometimes a lot of these people as well, like before they ran these companies, work together, were friends, respect each other. It's a perfect example. Look at like the whole Ananta situation. People losing their shit, angry on behalf of Insomniac and Sony with Ananta when they're happy to allow them to do it, because guess what? They're going to make money together off it, right? You know, there's even some people assuming that potentially Insomniac might have helped them with animations for specific things, right? The companies do not look at the things the way we do, right? They look at it through a lens of profitability, cash, ROI, and that's about it, right? And if keeping things friendly with other companies, but also beating them monetarily, is the way to go. They'll stick to it, won't they? As you say, like they don't see it the same way we do. It's all about shareholders. It's not necessarily about and I'm not saying there isn't some competition, but I think it's healthy competition, right? It's totally different to how the communities view things.
Side here is you. I imagine the majority of gacha players are rational and mature people, and that there are many online personalities that are more neutral and more accepting of different ideas. I don't think any game is perfect. Even the best of the best can have critiques you can point out, and even the worst can possibly have redeeming qualities. Of course, I'm fairly certain that I myself may have contributed to some tribalistic sentiments. Believe me, I know I'm...
Hey, we all have, right? I've said jokes And even if it's just a joke, some people don't get jokes, right? You know, I've made videos comparing animations in games. I've joked about things with Hoyo. I've joked about things with Wuthering Waves. I've joked about things with a myriad of games, right? As content creators, I think pretty much most of us have to accept that we've probably contributed into some way, right?
I'm not immune to this. As a game company, goodwill is a currency. It's gained when you do good things and spent when you do bad things. You can support and spend money on the game because you like how you're being treated. However, never forget that you are the customer. The moment you start defending the game from all forms of criticism is the moment you lost. And that is why I believe tribalism is the worst product that came out of gacha gaming, and the most damaging trap you can fall into. You are quite literally stopping the developers from making changes that could improve the game and allowing to exploit you even further. When you take a step back and really examine the gacha...
This is why you don't really... Like, I'll have jokes, right? But you won't really... Because, like, I remember before when I was speaking about some stuff with Wuthering Waves, right? And I got people coming in, now do Genshin. And I'm like, well, I'll stop playing Genshin. Why am I going to critique Genshin? Genshin's a fine game. I enjoyed it when I played it. But why am I going to critique something I don't play? I critique things I like, right? Because the things I like, or the thing I'm actually engaging in at this particular moment, I want it to improve. Now, I'd love to see Genshin improving the ways that the Genshin players want it. I'm not going to stand here and say this is what Genshin needs, because that's for the Genshin players to decide, right? The same way as it is for the WoW players now, because I've kind of stopped playing WoW as well. But when I was playing Wuthering Waves, I was hypercritical because I loved it, and I think you should be critical of the things you love. It's the same way of family and friends, right? You know a friend when they'll be willing to tell you you're fucking up. That doesn't mean they're hating on you. That's a good friend. A bad friend's the one who's like, yeah, man, whatever. You've had 5 points. Yeah, drive home. I don't mind. You know what I mean? The good friend is the one who's like, bro, you ain't driving home, man. I'm going to call you a cab. Get in a taxi. You know? At that particular point, you might be like, fuck off. But if you wrap yourself around a lamppost or you end up running somebody over, I know that's an extreme version of something. You know what I mean? Critique is for the things you enjoy, in my opinion. And that's how it should be used. And if you're a fan of something, you should definitely be critiquing it. Come on, 3 points.
I think there's a reason why this genre of games will always have a degree of stigma that will never go away. A lot of the methods used to try to retain and monetize users are implicit and invisible. When you've been playing a number of gacha games, a lot of these tactics may have been normalized, seen as an everyday occurrence. It might be a weird experience when a game doesn't have a stamina system, or a gacha system. Regardless, everyone plays games to have fun. And while there's a lot of ways that developers can try and sneak predatory practices in the game, there's absolutely ways to enjoy it as well.
Bro's British but can't take 3 points, you know. Slander.
I want to believe that the practices mentioned in this video will take away from what could have been the most ideal experience. And the best gacha games by my standards are the ones that take away the least.
If you're a well-taught person, you'll probably be able to calculate the max pity total of the gacha currency as the real price tag of gacha characters. You understand that buying expensive skins doesn't affect your social standings or make you superior to other players. How the in-game characters are there as emotional objects for you to feel affectionate to. How this whole gacha tribalism argument is nothing more than a smokescreen to make you feel loyal to your own game and feel outrage towards others. What gacha games ultimately prey on are your emotional and mental needs. They create a fantasy, a world where you can fill the shoes of someone strong and powerful, and always longed for by others. There is nothing wrong with indulging in...
You deny your liver its purpose, right? That's what it's there for, right? You know what I mean? And when people say you drink, yeah, evolution gave me a liver for a reason, bro. Come on.
such fantasies. However, just understand that gaming is a hobby, nothing more.
Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this discussion video that dives into the more hidden side of gacha games. I think studying the inner working of how these games affect human psychology is so interesting. Let me know if you know of any other hidden tactics that I didn't mention, and if you want to stick around for more gacha reviews and analysis content, you know what to do. And for those that wish to go the extra mile, you can support me for as little as $2
thighs and grippers. Yeah.
a month on Patreon. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to spend moderately, and always remember, have fun out there.
Yeah, man. Good video. Good video. Hard to disagree with anything, right? Obviously, I think the tribalism, if we're looking at gacha game monetization, you know, we're getting a little bit specific about things. It's not really anything to do with that, right? But it comes along with gacha, and I guess it could potentially enforce some of the other things, right? Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree with all of this. You know, gacha games do a lot of shitty things, but they're not. It's not exclusive to gacha games, right? Live service games do a lot of these shitty things as well, right? It's all about getting us in the hamster wheel and not wanting us to get off, right? In the hope that we'll just continue to spend more money as well. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy them, right? At the minute, it's kind of the genre I spend most of my time in because it allows for, I guess, psychological triggers, enjoyment of psychological triggers at the moment that are not necessarily negative ones, I suppose, in particular types of gameplay, you know? But again, as I say, Battlefield 6 is coming out soon. I'm going to be playing the shit out of that. And there's a few games coming that I'm going to be playing the shit out of as well, including Enfield, which, as I say, is still my most hyped game. Yeah, great video from Psyche. Is it Psyche or Psyche? Is it Psyche or Psyche, his name? Anyway, great video. Guys, show him some love. I think he makes banger videos. If I'm honest.